Boom. Hello, Brian. Welcome to the Crowdfunding Professional Association. Glad to be speaking with you this morning about crowdfunding, blockchain, initial coin offerings, and anything else that's on your mind.
All right.
I just like to hit record. That way you can just be yourself as we talk about what's on your mind in the crowdfunding space and in general get to know each other. But first, please introduce yourself because I think you're joining us from Trinidad and Tobago today. So you
Yes, I
might,
am.
yeah, you might not understand why I have on a hoodie because it's 36 degrees in Washington, D.C., and it is way too cold for me.
Right. Okay. So again from the top, Brian, um, I'm a qualified barrister in England and Wales, but not practicing in England and Wales at the moment. But I'm a practicing attorney at law in Trinidad and Tobago, and my focus is commercial law and civil law basically. But I recently, for the past year or two, I've been doing some regulatory kind of stuff involving blockchain and cryptocurrencies because I've been getting some clients who want to understand the landscape or the ecosystem of blockchain before they set up their startups. So essentially, that's what I've been doing. And I also run my own startup. I run it with my partner. It's called Block 60. And we basically provide consultation services and help um, help startups understand policy and the the legal ground situation before proceeding to set up or before they do their white papers, etc.
Wow, you must be in high demand, particularly with all of the metaverse and all the metaverse shenanigans coming out of um, the Caribbean, not only in Barbados, but the sand dollar, whatever happened to the petrodollar. It's not in the Caribbean, it's on the other side of the Gulf, but it's
Yeah.
in the general area. So first question, because particularly at the Crowdfunding Professional Association, we want to be very clear. When you say you're a qualified barrister, I think you're the first qualified barrister I've ever interviewed or spoken to for the Crowdfunding
Oh,
Professional Association. So give our audience, our members, a little context. What does qualified barrister mean and why that's important for the jurisdiction, whether you're in England or Wales, or if you're in the Caribbean, why that understanding that designation is important?
okay. So basically, the term barrister. Okay, let's go slightly back. In England, the legal profession is split. Okay, so you have solicitors and you have barristers. So barristers, they have the rights of audience. They can go to represent clients in court. Okay, and they can practice reserve legal activities according to the BSB code of conduct. Then you have the solicitors. So solicitors are the first port of call for clients. You just can't access a barrister in England. You have to go through a solicitor. Then the solicitor takes your instructions and they go through your file and they'll find a suitable barrister for you. So barristers hardly access clients off the bat. So
Mhm.
you have to go through a solicitor who will instruct a barrister. But in other common law countries, we'll say common law, simply countries that practice English law. So my home country is Kenya. So like you'll see in Kenya, you have what you call an advocate, and an advocate does the job of both a barrister and a solicitor. It's not as traditional as in England. In Trinidad as well, you have and so you have you're called to the bar as an attorney at law, but you find some attorneys who prefer to do instructional work, which means they'll meet the client, they'll do the paperwork, and then they'll instruct an advocate attorney to go to court. So it's basically the nuance is the advocacy. So the training is different for a barrister and a solicitor. I think I'm going into too much depth to this,
No, no, no,
but
that's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah,
Because if you're thinking about doing what you think is an ICO, an initial coin offering, a token generating event, something that you're calling the issuance of a security,
right,
regardless of what you call that, Duck, you might talk to a solicitor to get that sort of organized. But if you need to go advocate against the regulator, you need a barrister.
Yes.
And so I just want to lay that out, because I spent some time in Ireland and the UK, so I'm very familiar with the nuance between solicitor.
Right.
As you're looking at launching your global crowdfunding campaign, we work with Karm Legal, who's based in MENA in Dubai. MENA stands for the Middle East, North Africa. And there are nuances to the regulatory and legal structure in Dubai as determined by the Abu Dhabi Financial Regulatory Authority, which again, that's a little bit too in the weeds, but just to say, if you're thinking about doing a global crowdfunding campaign, you need to be aware that there are different regulatory structures and frameworks.
Yes.
If you're in Kenya, Wales, or you're in Barbados. And so just be sure you're talking to the right type of legal professional.
Exactly. And just to add on that, different lawyers have different practices. So you need to talk to the lawyer. It's like if you're going to a dentist or going to a teacher, you need to get the right person for the right service. So not all lawyers practice crypto, but it's a new thing. So you'd rather talk to people who at least have an idea of what's going on in the landscape and in the community as well.
100%.
Yeah.
So now that we've gotten the legal history out of the way, so to speak, let's talk about blockchain and initial coin offerings. What are you seeing there in Barbados? What are those hot topics that are coming across your desk as a solicitor? I'm sorry, as a barrister.
Right. So I'm in Trinidad, but most of my client base comes from actually the UK and the US, because in Trinidad, we are still trying to catch up with what's happening. So you can see Jamaica, they launched their CBDC, which is not built on blockchain. So it also brings some questions as to the security of the CBDC. And in Bahamas, you have they have their CBDC that was launched. I don't have too much information as to the Bahamas, but what I could tell the viewer is the regulation in the UK and in the US is what I mostly look at, because it's more developed, especially with the US. It's more developed, and you can look at it and find a way of advising your client and for them to, know where they should step on and what they shouldn't step on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So now that we have it clear, you're in Trinidad, and I apologize, I talked to Jonathan Brathwaite. He's in Barbados. He's a tax attorney, actually. And so he's always got my brain on Barbados. So I apologize.
Right.
Trinidad.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
I'll come down to Carnival and we'll work it out.
Right. Okay.
So if you can provide the Crowdfunding Professional Association members, what are the 2 or 3 things where you see that your clients need the most help or education? Just something general, nothing too specific.
Okay. So in terms of crowdfunding, the key challenge has been scams. Okay. Because you have these white papers, they're drafted, and in legal terms, we say they're misrepresentations. So someone tells you they're going to sell you 100 tokens of this and this and this. You're going to get this. Your returns are going to be this, but you don't get that. For example, let's look at the Squid Game protocol that recently, what happened recently. So you buy into a white paper with the expectation of profit, and it just disappears.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. The second thing is guys have to be aware of protocol attacks, because with ICOs, you're looking at smart contracts, and these smart contracts are not foolproof. So there could be a bug error, or someone could come as a white hat hacker and say, we've noticed there's a loophole in your protocol, like with the Polygon network, and we are going to take this, and we're expecting a bounty of you. a bounty from you. And I find this quite challenging in that the bounties are so hefty, like they're offering millions of dollars just to get their money back. So that's the second area. So yes, you have blockchain, you have smart contracts, but what happens when you lose your money in a protocol? Okay.
Great
So
question.
looking at the at the law in England and Wales, there's some cases that are coming up where like they're called injunctions against persons unknown. So you go to the High Court and file a submission, make an application for an injunction against persons unknown to trace into the lost funds. Okay, so there's been successful applications. I just don't have those notes with me right here, but after this, I could send you the link and probably you could shoot a voiceover telling them about the persons unknown type of cases, but it's possible.
So one of the things I want to point out is, or want to highlight is, yes, one, this doesn't sound very decentralized. So it sounds like this is very well regulated, particularly if you're going to go use the court to pursue recourse from persons unknown, because that sounds like there's going to be an investigation into that.
Yeah.
And so what that highlights is, even if you are in Trinidad, there are still regulatory structures that enable consumers, investors, and founders to, even if you don't know who has your money, to initiate that investigation, so that regardless of jurisdiction, someone can start that investigatory process to figure out if Brian lost money in a protocol, who has that funds now. And there's some technical nuances to that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I just want everyone to understand that the initial challenge to a quote unquote decentralized space is you don't have that legal recourse, in which case, good luck.
Yeah, and Sam, I think you're the best person as well to advise us on this point, because let's say in a proper DEX, when the money is gone, the money is gone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and if you're in this DeFi platforms where the protocols have some custody, it's also not, like you said, it's not fully decentralized, because there's some centralization aspect there, which enables the tracking people like Chainalysis and probably TRM Labs to come and look into the protocol and see, okay, this went to this. But you are the expert in that, so you'd probably give us more enlightenment on that.
I will just say that Chainalysis started off with a $15,000 contract with the FBI, and now they're up to around $9 million contract. It's Chainalysis. If you go to chainalysis.com, you can see the full suite of anti-money laundering, know your customer checks that they can deploy to figure out this person unknown on this legal document that came out of the UK. Who is that person? So, and again, if you have something on the quote unquote blockchain, it's a distributed timestamp ledger of records of data. So you've left digital fingerprints. And so when you go to take those funds off chain, or to realize them in the cash and do value, that's typically where the authorities figure out who exactly are you. In all cases, if you're going to launder money, use cash. I'm not encouraging money laundering, but use cash, because cash is truly anonymous. So I want to go back a little bit. And so as you're talking about crowdfunding there in Trinidad, is there the regulatory structure for businesses in Trinidad to raise money via crowdfunding?
Right. Again, I'll push you back into England, because I think I have a bias towards England, because that's where my first legal training was. So, and in common law countries, let's say like in Trinidad, we don't have the legal precedent as it is right now to deal with such matters. So you have to go to the English precedent, because in a country like Trinidad, we read precedent from the UK Supreme Court, and Trinidad is still under something called the Judicial Council of the Privy, the Judicial Council of the Privy Council, you know, the Judicial Commission of the Privy Council, or something like that. So our highest court in Trinidad is not the Court of Appeal, it's the JCPC in England. And the JCPC in England are basically Supreme Court judges in England who just change their robes and go into another room and help to, you know, so you'll find the names are the same. Lord Dyson, Lord so-and-so, Lord so-and-so, it's the same people. So that's why you have to understand the English position, first of all. And where the English position doesn't speak to anything, like you'll find in the UK, the FCA is very silent when it comes to ICOs, okay? As long as it's not e-money, electronic money, they won't regulate it. Because it's a very hands-off approach, which I find weird, because when it comes to traditional crowdfunding, as long as it's on a website, Article 25 of the Financial Services and Markets Act 2000, it looks at such things. But when it comes to ICOs, it's neither here nor there. So this is where securities lawyers go to look at the US position, which comes from the Howie Test of 1946. But then the Howie Test, how it's subject to interpretation, because it has it has one long test, but I've broken it into 4 limbs. So the Howie Test says an investment contract exists when there's an investment of money in a common enterprise with a reasonable expectation of profits to be derived from the efforts of others. But it could also not be from the efforts of others. So there's legal cases showing that it doesn't have to be from the efforts of others. And so if it falls in that bracket, it becomes a security, or subject to interpretation if it goes to court, because that's what the courts are for. But at times it's not a security. Like, for example, Bitcoin is not a security because it's readily available. It's like it's a substitute for real currency. So it's there. So
here in America, the Commodities and Future Trade Commission, the CFTC, they set out a position paper that Bitcoin was a commodity in 2013 or 2014. And and here in America, the Internal Revenue Service, owned by their street name, the IRS. Everyone knows the IRS. They view Bitcoin as a property. That's how they tax it. So again, it depends on which jurisdiction you're in. You need to you need to get with a solicitor to help you understand the policy, the background, and if you need to go advocate for yourself in front of a regulator, you need a barrister. And one of the things I want to remind anyone who's watching this or listening to this, the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, they're based out of the UK. They come up with the crowdfunding rules for the UK. Crowdfunding in the UK is I would say more advanced or mature even than here in America, particularly in what's called the peer-to-peer lending arena. And correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the limit, the raise cap in the UK went up to 12 million euros recently. Is this right, or did I just make this up?
Right, I'm not sure, but funny enough, I was looking at the Jobs Act in the in the US, and I saw your limit is up to 1 million. Is that correct? So you could educate me on that, and I could find out our legal position and get back to you on that as well.
So what happened, and I'm going to give the Crowdfunding Professional Association credit for this. we've been advocating for the Jobs Act, jumpstart our businesses and startups since before 2012 when it was created. Title III of the Jobs Act, it got signed into law May 16, 2016 by this guy named Barry Obama, known by his street name Barack. And so Barack Obama signed Title III of the Jobs Act May 16, 2016. Title III enabled regulation crowdfunding, or Reg CF, where you can have retail investors invest in your deals. Title II enabled Reg D, Reg A plus, Reg A and Reg A plus crowdfunding campaigns. So the Reg D and Reg A plus portals have been around a couple of years longer than the Reg CF portals. So what happened March 15th of 2021, through the efforts of the Crowdfunding Professional Association, we got the limit for Reg CF raised from 1 million to 5 million.
Right.
And so if you're in Trinidad,
Mm-hmm.
you're an entrepreneur in Trinidad and you want to come to America to raise money, you do have to be a bona fide American business. But again, that's something where most of them are in Delaware or Florida, where they set up a business entity in America to help raise funds. And so you set up your American entity because you're going to do business in America, expand your operations from Trinidad into America. Now you can raise up to $5 million US via Reg CF.
Right.
That's as of March 15, 2021. It's very important because before March 15th, the limit was $1 million. After March 15th, it's now 5 million. And so what we've seen in the last 2021, actually go back to 2020, was a record-breaking year for Reg CF, regulation crowdfunding, because in 2021, in the midst of the pandemic, $214 million was raised across all 45-ish or so, about 45 platforms in 2020. So they raised $214 million, which was a 105% increase over 2019, where they raised just at 105 million in 2019. Fast forward to Q3 of 2021. We're going to timestamp this. It's November 17, 2021. So far, Reg CF by itself has raised a little over $510 million. So 2020, we went from 214 to Q3 2021, we went to a little over 510 million. That's a 100% increase year over year. And so we're very excited about that, partially because the limit for Reg CF has gone up to 5 million. So you've seen a lot of businesses who are able to raise $5 million. And I always forget to say, this is annually, meaning if you start a campaign in October 2021, you have an entire year to raise that funds. You don't have to raise all $5 million in the first day or the first month. You have 12 months. Right. So if you start in November 2021 and you close your fund, let's say you close it in February, right? It takes you 4 months to hit your funding goal. Not unrealistic, it's probably more accurate. So you can go back and raise another $5 million in December of 2022. You just have to have that 12-month period. And so what this enables businesses to do is, remember, this ability has only been around since March 2021, so no one has done it yet, where they've able to raise $5 million and then a year later come back and raise another $5 million. I should actually put an asterisk there because there's a company called Popcom, Popcom, ran by Dawn Dixon. She raised, under the old rules, she raised $1 million in 2017, raised another $1 million in 2018. Then she raised another like 2.6 million under a Reg A exemption the next year. So this is where someone every 12 months, they've been able to go back and raise additional funds. So that's specifically in the Reg A and the Reg CF space. Now that you can raise $5 million. In the Reg A plus space, Reg A and Reg A plus, the plus means you can have retail investors in your deal. Do you have retail investors in Trinidad? The definition of a retail investor?
Right. I'm not sure about that, but
No, because like in UAE, United Arab Emirates, they don't have they've only recently adopted a retail investor definition. And so just for here in America, if you're an accredited investor, you make more than $200,000 a year as an individual, or as a couple, $300,000, or you have more than $1 million in assets, excluding your primary residence. There's some other little rules, but those are the big three ones. If
right.
you're unaccredited, that means you make less than $200,000 a year. Also, with the new rule updates, retail investors, unaccredited investors, can invest around, it's like 2.5% of their income or $5,000, whichever is greater. So there are some limits on how much retail investors can invest. These are American standards. Depending on where you're at in the world, you need to know how much can my potential investors invest. And so in the Reg A Plus world, the limit went from 50 million to 75 million. Why that's important is if your business or enterprise needs to raise more than $5 million using via Reg CF, you can still engage retail investors along with accredited investors, sharks, institutions, whales, etc., in your Reg A Plus vehicle. Right now, it's a little over 60% of all investors are already accredited who are investing into Reg CF deals. So it's smart money and investors. An investor is a customer that you turn into an investor who are going into the deals. So that's sort of the state of regulated crowdfunding here in America. And we anticipate that we're going to have 100% year over year growth. So for the next until about 2026, where we're going to plateau somewhere between 8 billion and 12 billion a year that's generated through just Reg CF, not including Reg A Plus. And people don't understand. They're like, Samson, you can't go from 2019, 100 million raised across all 60 plus platforms. And now you're saying that by 2026, you're going to be doing 8 to 12 billion. And part of that is in order to develop the hockey stick, you got to develop the blade first, then the shaft. And when we go from 100 million in a year to 100% growth year over year, this year, 2021, we're going to do about 550, maybe 580 million total. We're already at 500 million. So we have, 43 days left in the year. In America, the trend is from October to December, it's crowdfunding season. That's when the most investments are made. We think it's partially for Christmas planning, like, oh, Brian loves this company. He's told me about it. I'm gonna buy him some stock in it. We think that's part of the driver. And the other part is people situating themselves for taxes. So they're like, oh, I need to make some investments. And so for this year, we're going to be around 550 million. We're just going to call it 550 million. Next year, the Reg CF industry is going to do $1 billion in 2022. And we anticipate that, again, that 100% increase year over year. So 2022, it's $1 billion. 2023, it's $2 billion. 2024, it's $4 billion. 2025, we hit $8 billion. We anticipate a little leveling off where consistently the market will generate around 8 to 12 billion a year just in the Reg CF vertical. And that doesn't include the Reg A Plus nor the Reg D investments that are going into businesses. So crowdfunding is taking off in a big way here in America. And we're always looking at what's happening in our Caribbean neighbors neighborhood, because we're either going to bring entrepreneurs to America from the Caribbean, or you're going to follow the Jobs Act here in America, there in Trinidad, adopt some similar policies. So money from America can flow to Trinidad.
Yeah, because in terms of Trinidad statute, you mostly get some stuff coming from Canada and the UK. So mostly business stuff is Canadian, and I'm sure they won't be shy to borrow from any other jurisdiction that has something solid, advanced, concrete, because at the end of the day, they want to help startups, people who are emerging, So I think it's for the benefit of the economy anyway.
100%. So I do want to ask you one more question before we wrap up, because I got to run to another call.
Right.
Are you familiar with DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations?
Yes, I am.
Do you have an opinion or anything you'd like to share about DAOs in regards to the intersection of DAOs and crowdfunding?
Right. So DAOs had a weird experience after the DAO hack. And the problem is the legal status of a DAO. What's a DAO? Can it be recognized in law? So in England and Wales, that's a gray area because there's nothing to speak to that right now. But in the US, in the state of Wyoming, they are recognized as legal entities. And Wyoming has been coming hard. Every week, there's something new coming out from them. So actually, I'm taking a keen interest in the DAO research because this is part of my PhD research.
Excellent.
Like I've literally allocated a section on that, and I find this is where things are going. So as much as there could be tensions and say, oh, after the DAO hack, this happened, and there's another, this is where the technology is going. So there has to be a point of intersection between the regulators and innovation. It always can be like, okay, we don't recognize this, so we don't give about this. So we have to understand where the technology is going. Smart contracts are there already, and they're doing magical things. So we just need to be positive, really, and understand where things are going and empower people, empower more lawyers to understand where things are going. But for me, I find DAOs are beautiful and they're changing the face of corporate governance. Yeah.
You are waxing poetically this morning, Brian. so I'm going to give you a little bit of feedback. Right now, there's an organization, a DAO rather, called Constitution DAO, where they've raised over they're over $6 million, I believe, or $3 million to buy the U.S. Constitution from a private person. And so my position is that DAOs are unregulated crowdfunding, because when you get these, I think it's 7,000 people who've raised up to $3 million at this juncture to buy the U.S. a copy of one of the original copies of the U.S. Constitution. Each of those DAO members have an interest in this property, in this piece of paper, and that is a financial interest. And so I tell people, if you take DAOs and replace DAOs with the word distributed autonomous organizations with the word REIT, real estate investment trust, and then you replace the Constitution with a building, then you'll understand what fractional ownership of a physical piece of property means. And in which case, DAOs are just, again, unregulated crowdfunding unless you've situated yourself to go through either the SEC or the FCA. That's my opinion. You're going to be the doctor soon. So you can tell us.
Just follow. And I think the thing with DAO, the scary bit with DAO is, so in law, there's a term that says you're jointly or severally liable. So you see, until this gray area in DAOs is sorted out, in America, in Wyoming, it's kind of taken care of. But in other jurisdictions, once that legal status and that who's liable for what is taken care of, if a DAO is liable for something, then everybody goes down. You see that's the downside of things. Yeah. So it's just an ethical conundrum that we have, that with more study and with more theoretical understanding, we'll be able to cross the bridge. That's my position.
I love it. Brian, say your last name for me.
Mondoh.
Mondoh. Okay, so
Yeah.
my name is Samson Williams. I'm president of the Crowdfunding Professional Association, and we've been talking to Brian Mondoh, originally from Kenya, but a barrister from the UK and Wales. We're going to skip the talk about Wales leaving the UK at this moment. And next time we have a conversation, we're going to get to the real nitty gritty of our barristers, doctors, even if they don't have a PhD, or do you just call them lawyers? Because here in America, a JD,
once you have a JD is a doctor. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the barrister is just a barrister. It's just a barrister.
So it's the quickest way to start a fight in America is to call an esquire, someone with a Juris Doctor who has passed the bar, an American bar, Dr. So-and-so. Typically, I do this with Dr. Maureen Murat, who is a licensed lawyer in New York, Florida, and DC.
Right.
But he's like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not, but I'm like, it's a terminal degree.
I think I saw your video last week when you're discussing the Blackton MasterCard. That's her?
Oh yeah, that's her. Yes.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna have to have another conversation. We'll book some time because this has been a great chat. Because I do like your comment where you need to empower more lawyers to be comfortable with both blockchain and crowdfunding. So we might come back and just write out a script to say, if you're a lawyer, here are the 10 things you need to know about blockchain. Here's the 10 things you need to know about crowdfunding. And you can use it for your PhD research if you like. So that's my offer to you for next time we talk. But
thank you so much.
In the interim, tell people how they can find you, contact you, retain your barrister services.
Right. So I'm always on LinkedIn because I find LinkedIn has a beautiful community. Samson, that's how we met. And that's where you have Anthony Day, you have Kier Finlow Bates. Like you have the whole community there. It's supportive. When you don't know, you learn. Because I think what people misconstrue about blockchain and crypto is you have to know everything. You actually don't have to know everything because some parts they interconnect somehow. So you just need to know your basics, just know your basic punches and keep learning every day. You have to invest your mind. You have to be eager to learn and you'll find your way around it. So that's my advice to everybody, a lawyer or a lay person. Just have the yearning and the rest will happen.
Awesome. Brian, I promise you we're going to come visit you down there in Trinidad. We might have to form a chapter of the Crowdfunding Professional Association in Trinidad, because I think you're onto something when you talk about empowering more lawyers, because there's some education that barristers and solicitors there in Trinidad need to be aware of, particularly as their clients are looking at either coming to America or having American investors come to them. There's some training we can do to help socialize and normalize when we say Reg A, Reg CF, Reg A plus, Reg D, and Reg S. Reg S is what allows international investors into deals in America. So they'll be like, oh yeah, I know that is. Stay tuned for that. Thank you for joining us. It's freezing in Washington.
Thank you so much.
So stay warm in your part of the world.
All right, good. Cheers. Thank you so much. All right.
Bye.
Bye.